As Rangers fans, we know that a goaltender is the backbone of a hockey team. At Abundant Wealth Management, we are your financial backbone, offering financial planning, wealth management, tax planning, and estate planning services. To schedule your free consultation, head to www.abundant-wealth.com. That's www.abundant-wealth.com. Abundant Wealth Management. Live, plan, triumph.
You're listening to Rangers Radio, your home for end-to-end coverage of the New York Rangers. With your hosts, Brendan Azoff, Zach Domino, and Steve Pappas. Blue Shirts fans, the puck drops now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rangers Radio. We got Steven, we got myself, and we got Zook. And Zook is finally here with us again. I know Steven and I thought we lost him for a little while. We're glad to have him back
for a couple
days.
days.
There was a couple of weeks of MIA, and we were like, "Oh, what happened to Zook?" But we found him. He's back. He's here just in time for all the fun to start with the offseason. And we got a lot to talk about, even though the Stanley Cup final is officially over and we are in offseason mode. The Florida Panthers back-to-back Cup champions, Matt Rempe back in a Rangers jersey for 2 more years. And then we have to talk about all the RFAs, all the UFAs, the moving parts, the Keandre Miller saga, the saga that keeps going on. And on top of that, the NHL Draft is just over a week away. So before we dive into all of that, boys, what's up?
We had to drag Zook off the island or whatever island he was on. Listen, it's summertime. This is, but when you get to October, then the season starts, and then you're basically looking in the dirt until about now. So it was the perfect time.
No, how was your trip, man?
It was good. It was relaxing. I guess it's an off season. I mean, as a Rangers fan, we've had our off season going for a little bit, but in my world, June and July is very slow. So
where'd you go?
To do some things. Just went to like a bunch of islands.
Oh, you were like legitimately dragged off an island.
Yeah. So just hopping around. But
not by the Wi-Fi package.
No, that was like our one thing.
It's the world finder.
It was a baby moon. So we're excited about that. But no, I mean, I guess the goal. We'll get into more specifics about the Rangers as this episode goes on. But I guess after what happened in the final game and the Panthers winning and some of the stuff against Connor McDavid, my hope, and this is the lowest level, and we'll get into more specifics, like I said, is that next season the Rangers are good enough where the only thing we aren't talking about is, oh my God, the Rangers need to and will get Connor McDavid. Because you know what that makes us? That makes Rangers fans, and I was one, and M1, Knicks fans up until like 3 or 4 years ago, where every season it was like you would get hyped for like the month or two before. A bunch of the shitty guys that you signed on value deals, you were convincing yourself that they were going to have the year that they were going to have a crazy year. And then 20 games in, it's who can we get next year? And obviously, no matter what, when we're talking about a guy like Connor McDavid, there'll be some conversations, even if the Rangers don't lose a single game next year. But let's just be good enough next year where we're not spending post trade deadline after we traded a bunch of guys away because we're giving up on the season talking about how we're going to try and sign the best player of all time. Because let's just be honest, as we stand here right now, it's a great dream, but that's all it probably is and will ever be. So the goal now is to just not have Connor McDavid dominate Rangers talk next year.
Well, you obviously weren't here last week. We went on quick when the Kreider news broke, and we talked a little bit about McDavid, about, what the future has, and we'll go into more detail in this episode. But before we dive into everything that we want to talk about today, we got to get your thoughts. I know Steven and I both gave our favorite Kreider memory, but I don't know how much detail you got on the trade, but Chris Kreider's no longer a Ranger since the last time
I don't know if you know.
Yeah, it was.
Is he aware?
It's a fine trade. I mean, a complete dump, like a salary cap dump. I think the picks are some swaps were moving up and some middle rounds up. And the guy is a guy that I've heard is okay. And I've heard relative to the Rangers prospect pool, it's just a little better. He may even look better, surrounded by what we got. But I also heard his ceiling is maybe third, fourth liner at most. But again, to clear up that salary is huge, because I was reading an article today that teams don't stop, but it's kind of a little bit of a lull until right after the Stanley Cup, and then it really heats up until July 1st. So over these next 12 days, I was reading a lot of people are going to try and shed cap now. So to get out in front and to be able to do it earlier, I have a sneaky suspicion that if people are offloading things of the caliber and price and value of Chris Kreider, however you come to that calculation, as we get closer and move on further in June, they're not going to get as much as we did, or they're going to have to retain something, or the total value that they receive for giving up the asset won't be as much as we got. And then the other side of it is, regardless of your opinions of Chris Drury, the fact of the matter is it gives the Rangers and Chris Drury more time to kind of come up with a plan, because you know for certain that you have this money available. So I think everyone knew it was going to happen. Great player for the Rangers. I'm sure we'll have conversations, and a bunch of people will have conversations about whether number 20 should be up in the rafters or not, and that's conversations for later days. But my favorite moment, it's recency bias, but it also carries weight without the recency. The 3 goals. And for me, it's because the swing was so big. Like, if you categorize where I was in that moment and where it took me, there's very few moments in sports where I went from like texting people, like, we're gonna lose this. Like, there was no chance we won Game 7. I was like, we're not gonna win Game 7. Like, I can't believe I was freaking out during the first 2 periods of Game 6, and then he did what he did, and what a moment. And then it led to, us taking the lead. I mean, it was a start of like a really good week, 2 weeks of being a Rangers fan. Some of the best that we've had, in recent memory, on top of being 2-0 up against the Lightning. So that's probably the moment, but he has a lot. I mean, that's the thing about Chris Kreider. He just has a lot of big moments, and he showed up a lot. And I think that's why people, including some of us up here, thought that there was some value to that. Look, are the Ducks going to get big game value out of Chris Kreider? I don't know. I watched the Ducks play at the end of the year, and I was actually thoroughly impressed with them. And now they got Quenneville's their coach, right?
Yep.
So who knows how they're going to be? I know they have some young rising talent, but I mean, I thought the value would more so come from maybe a team that during the regular season didn't need the 50-point Chris Kreider, needed the penalty-killing 20-goal Chris Kreider, and then hope he had his big moments in the playoffs. But yeah, look, I'm not actively rooting against him on the Anaheim Ducks. Like, it's not going to be something where, Chris Kreider scores 2 goals in the opening game next year, and I'm like thoroughly depressed at that point. I think it was a mutual breakup, and I genuinely hope that he continues to have success individually, obviously, not team success with another team, and I'm sure he will. He seems like a guy, from everything we're saying, with big moments and stuff like that, that this is the ultimate chip on your shoulder, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if he had a really good start to the year next year. But I think we all kind of know who he is right now, and for what we need in order to improve our roster. In a perfect world, maybe we keep him, but that was salary we needed to shed for sure to have anything going into this season, other than let's hope the guys that we had last year turn it around.
Yeah, and I think it's something when we looked at, I think at this point it's fair to say the inevitable trade of Keandre Miller.
Yeah,
you have like hockey is hockey culture as a whole. People do business with people that they're comfortable with. And the Rangers have done business with the Anaheim Ducks before the Chris Kreider deal. So that wasn't a completely out of left field destination for Chris Kreider to land. I think along the same realm, if we're talking about Keandre Miller as well, that might be something to look for, look at. Who are the teams that the Rangers have done business with in the last year and a half as to a destination for Keandre Miller? I firmly believe it's the LA Kings. I don't and the Rangers really haven't done any deals with them. So that kind of goes against my better judgment of what I was just saying. But I think especially with the Kings potentially losing Gavrikov and potentially Gavrikov coming to New York, that's crazy that it's 2 weeks away from July 1st. And we're going to be talking about free agency signings. But yeah, I think it's not an outlandish thing to think that he's going to end up in LA, but I really think that as much as I don't like it, as much as a lot of people don't like it, I think that Keandre Miller ship has sailed. I think, we're going to be talking about trying to fill that role of second pair defenseman coming into the season. And it might be Gavrikov. Hopefully, I mean, I swear to God, if we come out next season with Fox and Carson Soucy to start, I'm gonna jump off my building because it's going in reverse at that point. But
yeah,
we talked a lot last week about McDavid, and we mentioned it earlier, and it feels like such a New York thing to do, to be like, big shiny star, give me, like, I need it. Larry Brooks had said somewhere around the realm of $20 million a year, which seems still underpaid. And the cap goes up $9.5 million next year to I think 105.
And those numbers aren't set in stone, right? Future cap.
I believe they are. These ones are.
I didn't know if next year was already set.
I don't think anything in the NHL is ever set in stone.
I was reading that maybe even if the next year is set in stone, I was reading like in 2 and 3 years, people think that it's way under forecasted. Like when they talk about what it's going to go up, like I think after 9 next year, it says like the next year is going to go up 7 or something like that was like the forecast, and people are saying it like exponentially over the 3 or 4 years.
The cap,
no pun intended, it's going to be like a hockey stick growth.
As of right now, the cap projections are 9.5 next year, 9.5 the year after, and then it stays, well, right now it stays stagnant for 27, 28, and 28, 29. So I doubt that would be the case.
No, I know Zook is our resident accountant on the show, but
that's true.
If you do 20 million, which is what Larry Brooks said he might get, right? And you subtract 9.5 from that, what do you get?
Artemi Panarin's contract.
I was going
to say, if you're making me do math right now, I'm logging off.
I mean, the Rangers will have the cap space to do it. It's just a matter of what can you put on the ice around him. Because if you're using your entirety,
do you need anything more than McDavid or Shesterkin though? Like
yes, you
really,
do.
It doesn't work
Edmonton
in Edmonton.
Yeah, but
you're taking away Draisaitl in the offense and giving him goalie.
Shesterkin.
So he might have a better chance. But
that's what I'm saying.
But before we move on and brush it off, in regards to Keandre Miller, I think that, we talked about it last week, Steven, and it's all over the place. It doesn't seem like a matter of if, but when, right?
Yep.
And when I look at Keandre Miller and I look at the timing that we have right now, right? We're just over a week away from the NHL draft. The Rangers are currently slated to pick 12. They have a huge decision looming of whether they're going to keep this year's draft pick or give it to Pitt and then keep their 2026 one. And my good friend Stefan Rosner, right? He has a Substack called the Elmonters. He was doing all these articles about the draft coming up. Obviously, we all know the Islanders' position, so there's a lot of draft buzz going on there. He said to me, keep an eye out for the Rangers. And when we talked off air, and I'm not going to go into all the details there, but the one chip that the Rangers have right now that's attractive to a lot of teams, especially teams that are in the top 5, 6 of the draft, that might need help, is defense, right? Chicago is rumored to be looking to move the 3 pick, right? Utah at 4, they could use a left defenseman. So I really wonder if come the NHL draft, the Rangers are keeping the pick, not to use it in draft 12, but to use it and couple it with Keandre Miller and move up. And there's a couple of very enticing players at the top of that draft board for the Rangers' offensive depth that is now lacking after all the moves that have gone on over the last couple of years. So we'll see. It's just something, speculation right now. There's nothing concrete, but there's a lot of chatter going around about the Rangers actively looking to move up a little bit, and we'll see what happens.
And you'd think if they are to do that, that means they have a guy in mind,
yeah,
right? That means they know that they're targeting somebody in that draft class, whether it be, I don't know who's falling. I don't know. I mean, that top pick is such a crapshoot.
That's what I'm saying. This is a year where that's why I don't think anything happens before the actual day of the draft, June 27th, because in a normal year, right, where we've had the consensus number 1, the consensus number 2, then you could look at moving up to 3, 4, 5, knowing these are one of the 3 players that are going to be left. This year, I know there's talk about Schaefer, there's talk about Misa, there's talk about all these guys that could potentially go 1. And then, before the year even started, everybody said James Higgins was the consensus number 1 pick, and he's kind of fallen back a little bit in the ranking. So there's a ton of top flight talent in the top 5 picks. And the reason everybody wanted the Rangers to give Pittsburgh the 12th pick this year is because after that top 5, 6, 7, it really starts to fall off in terms of their NHL potential. if you can move that 12th pick, and Drury's got, a couple of calls, because we know from all the stuff that we've been reading that he's one of the most active GMs on the phone right now. If he's got an idea that there might be a chance to move up, and he's gotten some interest on Keandre Miller, and based on the teams that might have shown interest in him, where they're drafting in the first round this year, you never know what happens. Now, this could be something where Miller gets traded. They use what they get in return for him and couple that with their 12th pick to get it. It doesn't have to all be in one encompassed deal, but it's definitely something to look out for. And, for Rangers fans that thought, hey, we're just picking 12 or we're giving it to Pitt, we might not even watch a first round pick this year. Well, there's a chance it could get pretty exciting come June 27th.
And that's actually a really interesting thought that I never thought of before this, because I was seeing some stuff around that I think people are overrating potentially what we would get back for Keandre Miller in a trade just because of his contract status. That if we couple him with something else to move up, like that's some pretty, because like the side, like once you said it, I was like, I don't know about that. The Rangers are kind of in this mode where I think with this core they're trying to do something next year. But then it brought me back to the thought where I don't think for Keandre Miller we may not even get that difference maker for him anyway, unless you couple it with other things. So to move it with just him in the 12th to move up to get someone in the top 5, that's pretty enticing to me, rather than doing what the Rangers normally do, getting some journeyman that they're hoping to turn it around that's had some good years, and like a middle of the road pick for someone like Keandre Miller.
Here's the thing about Keandre. I think, we obviously watch him every game, right? We watch him all the time. We know what he's capable of at his best. But teams that are looking to acquire somebody look at, he's a 25-year-old defenseman with a good motor who's big. I wouldn't say physical, but every general manager thinks they can fix somebody, right? And if you give somebody the guy with the height, the ability, the position, they can think that they can fix them. So I think Keandre Miller, and from everything that I've heard about the situation, it just comes down to term. Like the Rangers don't want to give him any sort of term, sort of more of a prove it deal for him. And that's not what the Miller camp is looking for. And if that's where the hangup is, then, listen, I'm not going to hate on a guy for betting on himself. I think that's if you have a offer out there that could be better for a team that wants to pay you, then by all means do it. But if you can get a good asset in return, and it's very interesting when you bring up the Rangers can move up in the draft idea. Because listen, there are certainly names in there that are very intriguing. And the thought of getting, you just mentioned that, last year he was a consensus top pick in James Hagens. Obviously now it's, a little bit less of a thought of him going in the top 5, but the ability to maybe pair him back up with Gabe Perreault, is that a horrible idea? They were one of the 2 of the 3 best, 2 of the 3 on the best line in college hockey last year. I'm all for the Rangers packaging this 12th pick. But again, it comes down to, do you know for a fact that James Hagens, if you're going to say trade up to 3 or 4, do you know for a fact that James Hagens is going to make it out of the top 5, which seems like the case? I've seen him drop to like 8, 9.
Yeah, I don't know how much I agree with those polls. I watched him a lot because of the Gabe Perreault connection, right? And every time there was a game on TV with Boston College, I would try to tune in to see what Gabe Perreault had. And uncanny, you're watching James Hagens essentially too, and then you watch the Team USA, and there's a dynamic there. So I think if something happened where if James Hagens was available and the Rangers had a pick, I don't know how you don't look at that natural connection. And it seems to be that's Drury's kind of MO, right, is the American college product anyway. Yep. So if it was him versus another, top 5 player that might have some Canadian European background, went junior route or European professional leagues, he seems to like the college style player a little bit more. And to me, the number 4 pick with Utah is what I have circled as the target. I know Chicago talked a little bit about being open to it, but they have a lot of young defensemen in their pipeline, so I don't know how much Keandre Miller is going to entice them, similar to Utah. But Utah's got $20.3 million in cap space, and they have 21 of their 23 roster spots already signed under contract. So it's not like that team is, has a ton of UFAs or RFAs available that they have to ink up right now. They have $20.3 million in cap space. They are the perfect candidate to trade for a young guy like Keandre Miller and say, we can give you the $5.5 million that you might be wanting, and it doesn't hurt our cap situation at all. So to me, that's one that looks, and like I said, there's a chance that this doesn't materialize, right? And they just wanted to move in Keandre Miller for something back. But Oli Mott is at $3.5 million. He's on their team under contract. Are they going to look to move him? So to me, that seems like a natural fit in terms of what they have available draft capital wise, what they have available roster wise, if you were looking to get something back for him. So I look at the 4 spot as if they were ever going to make that trade, that's probably the team that he's on the phone with the most. And this is not a situation like you have with, the Kreiders or Zibanejad of the world. Miller's an RFA, team controlled. If they want to send him to Utah and he doesn't want to go there, that's tough. He has to do it. So we'll see what happens. I mean, Chicago is another interesting avenue, obviously. And to me, it's 50-50 whether they trade Keandre Miller to another team and fill that spot the proper way. And if they're not going to fill a defensive spot the proper way, I'd rather the Keandre Miller trade happen so that they can get a young, promising player in the top 5 of the draft. Because to me, it's like if you move him, you get a draft capital back, and then you have to go out and sign somebody. Yeah, you sign Gavrikov, cool. If you sign Nate Schmidt, cool. But if you wind up not signing the proper players and you're running out a lineup that has Carson Soucy with Adam Fox and Vakanainen with Will Borgen,
which is where we've been at, by the way,
last year.
Which is where we've been at of signing the wrong guys. I mean, that's Drury's MO, is signing the wrong guys.
Well, they could have re-signed Nico Mikkola, who just won back-to-back Stanley Cups on the left side. And I'm not saying he would have been an answer, but he's better than the two of the 3 options that they've had the last 2 years.
I was reading on The Athletic today, and we talked about defensemen, and speaking of the draft, and if the Rangers don't move up, the Athletic did their whole mock draft, and they had this kid Jackson Smith, who by all accounts is like this. He's 6'4", something like that, almost 200 pounds at 18. And from what I read, it sounded like an Adam Fox type defenseman. Like I don't want to use these guys and be like he's going to be Adam Fox or he would be a Cale Makar, but that's like the type of player that they are talking him up as at 6'3", 200 pounds at 18 years old. I mean, even if you aren't able to move up in the draft, there are some guys that can fill holes on this team down the line. And I think it's less of thinking about what this year is going to be and thinking about what year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now are going to be, because it's impossible to rebuild in this market, but it is certainly an ability to retool. And I think we can see a guy like that be able to compete for a spot in 2-3 years at 20, 21 years old.
Yeah, these
and I was a big proponent.
Great, right?
Pardon?
I said the comps all sound great until they show up.
Exactly.
I went back and looked at Terrence's Kerry Terrence's scouting report when he was drafted, and you'd think it was Wayne Gretzky. It was crazy.
Alexei Lafreniere had the Sidney Crosby comparisons by Craig Button, I believe it was, on draft day, and I'm sitting here during the pandemic salivating like, oh, no way. And yeah, he's what, the career high 58 points.
Yeah, I remember watching his Team Canada highlights when after we got the first pick and we knew we were gonna get him, and it was like, oh my god, this guy is gonna be unbelievable. And then he is what he is. And I guess another name that I think people were talking about earlier in the offseason, but from everything I've been reading now, I think they're gonna hold on to Loff. Don't really care one way or the other, to be honest. I genuinely mean that. I'm happy to keep him because I like him. I just bought into him as our first overall pick, and probably until he's not a Ranger, I'll just keep kind of buying into him. But if we traded him and got something of value, which I think it depends. He's not that. Look, he's not the first overall pick, not even close to what we expected him to be, but he's not there, but also not too far away from being potentially worth the contract if the cap keeps going the way, obviously the cap has to keep going up the way it is, but like how many points away is he from being, I used to think he was 8.5. I think he's like 7.5, which again isn't great. And the other side of it is points is one thing, and we watch him every night, and there's a lot to be wanted that doesn't show up in stats, especially with the hustle and getting back in D. But he's someone who I don't really care one way or the other what happens to him. And the other guy, and I was a big proponent when we signed it, the Will Borgen contract hurts us right now. The Will Borgen contract hurts us for two reasons. One, the money side of it. And two, I think like the money isn't that bad where someone may want him as part of something if we were to take on more money. But the structure we gave him is ridiculous. Like I think he has a no movement that turns into a no trade this year for everyone that goes to like half next year. So I think it's like 4.1 of unmovable money when you see some people out there are looking for a decent right side defenseman. Like the whole contract from the money standpoint and the structure standpoint, that's one that hasn't been talked about too much. That'd be a nice 4.1 million to have right now. You know, you don't have him and you get rid of Kreider. That's over $10 million. That's a big fish at that point. That's basically as long as Drury can come up with the pieces to trade for someone, you can really take on any cap at that point.
Yeah, I mean that's why the offloading of cap by Drury has been really great moves all over. But it's what he's done to follow it up that's really.
And think about how much did he save from Kreider? It's not nearly what he get. And you guys always talked about it's not nearly what he gave away.
Yeah, I mean
he trade deadline always looked negative.
Yeah, he had no rhyme or reason to offer Borgen that contract 2 weeks after they trade. It made no sense at the time.
That's 7.7 right there.
Correct. Plus adding $3.5 million for a guy that really had terrible metrics coming into the year and was even worse with the Rangers. So the moves that he's made contract wise have been very questionable. The trades to offload salary and to get rid of the old guard and try and revamp it has been great, but I do not have the faith in him to revamp the roster and build a new core. That's the proper way for the modern NHL. It just doesn't sit. And I mean, Exhibit A is you have a year where Keandre Miller and Will Cooley headline 6 or 7 RFAs, and the first one to get a contract is Matt Rempe at 2 years, $975K per. And I'm not saying that's an overpayment. He's still under $1 million, which we've talked in the show. I said as long as they sign him for under $1 million, I can live with it. But priorities, man. Will Cooley's got to be the priority. Adam Edstrom should be a higher priority than Matt Rempe at this point. To me, that's just questionable in the order of it. I don't think anybody
just fell into their lap though.
It could have. I mean, listen, it could have just sat there and just been
literally went to them and was like, "I'll sign for like $1 million for 2 years," and they went back to him at 9.5, and then they met halfway. Like, I agree with you that there has to be a lot more.
He can't be the number one priority in the pecking order.
No, but I think it's more optics.
It was the easiest one that could get done.
I think that one was like, we're going to give you this, take it or not. And then like they gave it to him, and one day they just got a call back. It might have not even been a call back. They might have just accepted it immediately. Because I think Rempe genuinely wants to be here, and he's not that great of a hockey player. And I think a lot of his value comes from playing in Madison Square Garden. So playing here for 2 more years, I think could only benefit Matt Rempe.
There's a flip side to everything, right? And to me, it was if you were going to give Rempe $975, I would have sat there and offered Edstrom 2 years at $900 first. I would have said, this is what we can give you. You missed half the year with injury. But I think Edstrom's camp now looks at the comp and goes, you're paying Rempe $975. He barely plays, spends half his game in the penalty box, and doesn't produce points at the same level that I showed that I could do during the time that I was healthy on the fourth line, let alone. So same size, Edstrom's got much better speed. I think he was, by the metrics and burst outlook, the fastest skater on the Rangers last year. So to me, that should have been the guy that, if you're going to give a cheap 2-year deal out to, you go Edstrom first, but hopefully they could bring him back, bring Cooley back, and then we'll see where they go from there. But before we talk about anything else, I did want to say, former Ranger for a brief hiatus, Nick Bonino retired after 15 seasons.
He's an assistant. He's an assistant coach. So for the Penguins,
yep.
How did we move him? Or was he a free agent?
Okay, I'll follow up that question with another question. Who cares? who cares what we do with Nick Bonino?
I just forgot about how he fell off. But no, I mean, Nick Bonino is one of those guys that's easy to buy into for small runs, and then you realize, hey, he's Nick Bonino. At least when the Rangers had him.
I'll tell you this. I was tossing and turning last night thinking about how we offloaded Nick Bonino. that was what was keeping me up at night.
Did we give him to like Did we get rid of him? I don't even remember how he got off the team because it was so recent that normally with anyone as recent as Benino, I kind of remember how they left the team either through trade or we just didn't re-sign him. But I feel like we gave him to somebody.
Mode that I was going to say they DFA'd him, but I don't know.
They bought him out.
Yeah.
Oh, classic. Okay.
For like $8.
Yep. Or they placed them on unconditional waivers for contract termination. But that I think he was around the same time as the Gaudreau thing, so that got overshadowed.
Exactly.
But whatever. He just 15 years in the NHL is no small feat. So kudos to him on a solid career, made the most of it. Had some big goals with Pitt when they went on their cup runs.
Yep.
And unfortunately, just was too late in his career, which is Taylor's oldest time with the Rangers, right?
Yeah.
And I was watching the game 6, right? And the first thing that went through my mind is Gustav Forsling waiver pickup for the Florida Panthers. Sam Reinhart cast away from Buffalo. You just look throughout this roster, and they found pieces that work. And then you have the Rangers who did the same exact thing when they lost in 6 games to the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? And instead of doing that again the next year or keeping some of those guys, they then tried to go the exact opposite way and tried to bring in Tarasenko and Kane and all those stars. And since then, it's kind of been just mixing and matching lineups because they don't have the cap anymore. Yeah. So if they continued down the trajectory that they were on after they lost that series to the Lightning, where they were finding the right pieces, not necessarily the shiny ones, who knows where they would be right now? Because last year they lost to the Panthers in 6 games. There were 3 overtime games in that series. They didn't lose by more than 2 goals in any of those games. Like, they were a lot closer than I think we gave them credit for last year. And to have what happened this past season all of a sudden just unfold before our eyes, and now look at where they are. I mean, if you told us during this show at the end of that Florida series that come 1 year from now, Chris Kreider will no longer be a Ranger, they'd have Trouba would be gone, they'd be looking to move Keandre Miller, all these guys, we would have laughed and been like,
Kakko would be gone.
Kakko would be gone.
Edel.
Like, come on, man. Crazy.
I honestly forgot about those guys.
It's just the 180 that happened from, okay, you battled hard against Florida. They were 8-2 through 2 rounds last year in the playoffs. Or now 2 seasons ago, I guess I should say.
Yeah, they were because they swept the first round and then won 4-2. Yeah.
Yep, they finished the playoffs even though they lost with a 10-6 record.
And 9-2, right? Because they won game 1.
They lost. They were 10-3.
Game 2.
They were 8-2. They were 10-3. They were 10-3 and then lost 3 straight.
Yeah.
They were up 2-1 in that series. It's just
how did they lose game 1? How did game 1 of these?
They got
game
shut
1.
Out
they just got dummied. Yep.
And
they got
game 2 was the bar down game.
Yep.
And game 3 was the deflection in front of the net. Okay.
Wenberg. Yep. And then that was it.
I forget.
So I mean that's where we're at, right? And now all of a sudden it's a piecemeal roster trying to retool on the fly with a goalie that you just gave 11.5 for, which if anybody watched the Stanley Cup final, you should be thanking that they did, considering that rebound that Stuart Skinner let up on the 3rd goal there. But we're not talking about Shesterkin today because we've done enough of that throughout the course of the regular season.
Listen, I'll always say, and I tweeted it, that, you can have a good team that, you don't need the greatest players to make the Stanley Cup final. I mean, the Rangers in 2014 did not have a great team, right? But they had the goalie. Like, it takes
the right team, though.
Yeah, it takes. I mean, and we've seen it the last 2 years. It takes a goaltender to push you over the edge, and I mean that's really the only. I mean, the Panthers, if you look at them on paper, are not a star-studded team, right? Like, just everybody does their job, and then on top of that, they have a goaltender that is, when the lights turn bright, is one of the best on this planet, which is also crazy. And we've mentioned it before that, like, if Team Russia was back, like, Shesterkin wouldn't be on the team, or at least would be the 3rd string goalie in that regard, because it'd be Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky before Shesterkin, which is crazy. But
who's going to start for Team USA in that?
It's got to be Ottinger.
They're going to wind up doing Hellebuck, even though nobody pays attention to his playoff stats. And I don't know how he won the Hart, but I'm not doing that today.
That's because I hate guys like him. I hate guys like him. Yeah, it's just like, give me the opposite guy, like the Madison Bumgarner, who, like, you look at regular season stats, whatever, but gets there. Like, that's like the worst case scenario for a goalie.
I mean, it's Ottinger. It's Ottinger 100%.
It should.
I mean, he is. You look at his playoff numbers, and just don't ask Pete DeBoer, but I mean, his playoff numbers are incredible with a defense that is non-existent. I mean, we don't care about the Stars, so we don't talk about him here. But the Stars' decor was probably just as bad as the Rangers' decor this year. They just had better players up front that were able to outscore their problems, which is kind of what the Rangers did for 2 years ago. But
I want to give some flowers, since we were just talking about the 2014 team. They didn't have any star players on that, right? But they had a coach whose system fit the team that they had. They were able to shut most teams down. Even the Stanley Cup final, we were talking, there was 2 double OT games, 1 regular overtime game. Everything was tight. And
Dan Girardi's stick.
I know. And Dan Girardi's stick, the Dwight King, that would have been goaltender interference if they had review nowadays. But that's over 10 years ago. We're not, sitting here reminiscing about it. But when you look at what they've done the last couple of years and the coaches that they've brought in and the team styles that they've had, none of them mesh, right? And as much as we've kind of dogged Laviolette, the team that he had to play man-to-man, which was his style, that's what he's done and what he's coached for years now, didn't fit. It wasn't the right hire at the time. And now you look at what they brought in Mike Sullivan, right? Mike Sullivan's got a completely different system. And the fact that he seems to be involved, the fact that he's flying to Sweden to meet with Mika Zibanejad and talk through him, if they can give the reins to the head coach a little bit more and let him have some input on the decisions that Drury winds up signing off on and actually building a team that fits his style, I'm not saying they're going to win a cup, but they'll have a lot more success. And it'll be a lot better of a watch on both sides of the puck than it was throughout the end of last season, because it's just, you need to have a coach come in that can kind of take a roster and say, this is how I'm going to play. And if the pieces don't work for that roster and that style of hockey, you either have to fire the coach, which is the route that they've gone, or start to replace the players. And it seems like after Laviolette, it's now the players that are getting replaced, and hopefully they could start to fill in the voids of the roster with guys that fit Sullivan's system.
Yeah, straying away from the Rangers because we're talking about damn near everything in this episode. But in talking about, I might be in the minority here, but I love the Florida Panthers, and it sort of goes to what you're talking about a coach that has a system and a general manager that works with their coach to get players that buy into that system and fit into that system. I absolutely love the Florida Panthers. I might be one of very few outside the state of Florida. I might be one of very few even inside the state of Florida that love the Florida Panthers. But I mean, I don't know, and maybe it's just me being on Twitter way too often, but I don't know when hockey players were supposed to be like nice, right? Like, you have to be a prick to win on the ice. Like, you have to be a scumbag on the ice to win. There's got to be some sort of fire underneath you that, Tkachuk has and Bennett has and Reinhart has and Barkov has and Bobrovsky has, that like, those are the guys that I would literally give an arm and a leg for the Rangers to sign. Like, I would give up body parts for the Rangers to have those type of guys on this team, because that's how you win. I mean, Florida, the Tampa Bay, scumbags, right? Like, they had scumbags on that team, but they won because of it. I think really the only team that really wasn't and was like sort of likable was Colorado. I think they're more of an outlier because A, they didn't have an elite goalie to win a Stanley Cup, and B, they didn't really play a gritty style, right? Like, they're more of a speed, just beat you with speed and skill.
They had the depth of the skill on both sides of the puck that year.
Yeah, but it wasn't
one or the other.
It wasn't to bash your face in that the Lightning had and the Panthers currently have. Those are the teams that even the Blues, like, you go back to the Blues, they were not a great team, but they ran through people's faces to win games. And those are the guys that you need to win. And, I don't know if the Rangers have it. We'll see if, what the change up looks like, if they're going to all of a sudden, find that dog in them. And I know it's an overused term, but, find that sort of grit and toughness in them.
But on that point, right, who are the guys on the Florida Panthers this year that had that? Right, the guy that won the Conn Smythe had 15 goals. He's got that type of player. Matthew Tkachuk, Brad Marchand, all these guys that they produce, and the Rangers are trying to get that in your face, that mean style. But instead, they have players like Matt Rempe and Sam Carrick and guys that aren't going to carry that load. It has to be a fine line. You have to first look at the hockey player, right? You have to be like, this guy can play. The personality, that's a separate issue. But you have to pick the right player for that mold, right? Brad Marchand's a free agent. If there's not a ton of people clawing at him, and I mean, the Rangers need wing help, right? If it's a 1-year deal, you can get him, and you have room in the cap. The guy proved he could still play. You might as well maybe reach out to him. There's a lot of people. I mean, they've been linked to JJ Peterka, Martin Necas in Colorado, Nikolai Ehlers, but he just said today he doesn't want the spotlight, so please keep him away from the Rangers.
What a great thing to say as a competitor. I don't want to be in the spotlight.
I want a smaller area.
Enjoy Winnipeg and being out in the second round again, you loser.
We know, right, just based on the roster, that the main piece that they need to sign is a left defenseman. They need 2 in all likelihood. But outside of that, right, yeah, I'm not a fan of going into the season with the hopes of it being that Zibanejad bounces back, that Lafreniere bounces back, and that Othman, Berard, and Perreault become full swing 50-point guys out of nowhere.
Yeah, like let's temper those expectations on Perreault, by the way. He's going to be, 20?
Yeah. He's going to be 20. He hasn't played with any of these guys. The odds are is that he's not going to be on the top power play, because that's the Rangers love doing that to their, highly skilled guys. You have a spot open on the power play now that you could easily slide Gabe Perreault in and just move Trocheck net front. But they're not going to do that. Brennan Othman is a power play guy himself. So if you're not going to give him, like, you can't expect all of a sudden that it's, these guys are going to become regular NHLers to score. Now, ideally, that doesn't happen. I think Berard is going to be, leading the way for the younger players this year. He seems to have that Marchand style, right? He's got that tenacity that you want. He's undersized, but he has it. Othman should have it. I think we've seen that at times too. Yeah. Cooley's got it. So they're starting to add.
That's the thing. Those 3 are scumbags.
Yeah, they're adding the right, and those are the style. Now, do you have the leash and the temperament to allow Othman to develop, allow Berard to develop, and allow these guys to become that mold on your team?
I like Othman.
If they do.
I like Othman.
I don't think he's ever going to be the number 15 overall pick potential.
No, that's fine.
How many? Okay, all right, hang on. Wait, how many fucking guys are we going to say that about? Like, every guy that we've drafted, it's like, well, he's not going to live up to that draft number.
You know what I was thinking? I don't know where these guys are, because I know they're no longer with Buffalo. But whoever these scouts that Buffalo had hired that found all these guys that are really good. They had drafted Hagel in like the 6th round. They drafted Reinhart. They drafted Eichel. They drafted all these guys. Now, Eichel obviously was a no-brainer after McDavid. But those draft picks all hit, just not with Buffalo. Find those scouts and bring them to the Rangers.
Bro, so again, for those that don't know, I work in Rochester, which is an hour from Buffalo. So I live with a lot of Sabres fans, work with a lot of Sabres fans. And after the game on Tuesday, after Game 6 on Tuesday, one of our morning producers came in and just started listing off names of ex-Sabres that have won cups since leaving Buffalo. And I'm thinking about it. And first of all, he pulled up a picture and he goes, there are 5 Stanley Cups in this picture. I'm like, wait, don't say it. Let me name them without even looking. And it was Eichel, it was Reinhart, and it was O'Reilly, who I believe now it's 5 Stanley Cups between the 3. But I mean, listen, it's fucking crazy. Like, I went through their 2021 team. Like, they had Taylor Hall. They had, who was good this year. They had Eichel. They had Tage. They had a couple other guys.
Of theirs. He was a draft pick of the Blues, excuse me. But they took the chance on him. Blues gave up on him. It's like they're the anti-Rangers, right? The Rangers have made the picks that are deemed safe for the most part at the top of it. And then when they got in that 7 to 12 range, which is where they're at this year, that's where they take the gambles, right? The Vitaly Kravtsov gamble, when they could have had, I don't know if it was that year, but they could have had Bouchard or Dobson. I think it was.
It was that year.
Imagine Bouchard and Fox as your 1-2 on the right side. I mean, you start to look at some of these misses that they've had in those mid to late first rounds, and then you look at some of the good ones. But I mean, they had the 1 year where they were taking, like, Philip Ito was a great pick. You can't really say that was a bad pick because his career just got riddled with injuries early on, but he was the only one out of that group that seemed to have the elite end skill that they were seeking. Lafreniere shows glimpses, but not all of it. So drafting's a major issue, but it's really hard to build a Florida-like team when you make the wrong decisions when it comes to the trade and free agent market.
Facts.
And I think right now what their problem is not, it wasn't necessarily the agent core. I think that now it's a problem, so they have to get rid of them, which is what they did. But in 22, 23, when they were still, producing, It was who they surrounded it with. And I still don't get it, and this will bother me for years, is how you bring in Vetrano and Kopp and those guys and see the success that they had with the team that wasn't even supposed to be competing that year, and then do just a complete flip the next year and go, okay, let's bring in an aging star and Kane, which wasn't needed because they already got Tarasenko, who was playing pretty well for them. And they just completely messed up all the chemistry and momentum they had. And then they started to overcompensate year after year and try to add these big names that didn't work. And now we're sitting here.
All right, hang on. Closing the door on this Buffalo conversation that we just had. This is their 2020-21 lineup. So this was the 56, or was it 56 game season that they had? These are their top 13 point producers. Sam Reinhart, Victor Olofsson, Dahlin, Middlestat, Taylor Hall, Jack Eichel, Ristolainen, Brandon Montour, Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Dylan Cousins, Kyle Opozo. Not over under. How many games of 56 did that team win?
56.
22. Was it 22?
We got one for 22. I'll let Brendan guess, and then I'll let you know.
I mean, it can't be good. It's Buffalo. They always start the year with like 5-6 wins, so it always throws me for a loop. I'll say they won 26.
15. They won 15 games with that lineup. They went 15, 34, and 7. They had 37 points. They had 3 fewer losses than they did points. That's absurd.
It's tough.
With that lineup. And also, okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox after this one, but all the Sabres fans, and it might have just been my algorithm because I'm up here, all the Sabres fans shitting on Ranger fans for that like mock trade or whatever. You haven't made the playoffs in like 17 years. Like, maybe don't scoff at a trade offer your way, because clearly what you've been doing doesn't work. Like, it's just like, you can't, any trade offer that comes your way, you need to at least think about it.
I mean, I don't know why they would. First of all, if you can offer sheet Peterka and think that they're not going to match, I don't know why you go that route, unless you don't want to give up the picks. But I really like that's why the next week is so pivotal for the Rangers, because if they use the 12th pick and Keandre Miller and move up in the draft, then the whole offer sheet thing goes out the window. Right? You're not offer sheeting anybody anymore because you don't have the compensation available. If you do that but are asking for trades and you use Miller as a trade piece to move up, well, who are you giving Buffalo they're going to say yes to for JJ Peterka? Who are you going to give Colorado that they're going to say yes to for Marty Necas? It's just those things don't happen anymore. I don't know what Gabe Velarde is going to command on the open market contract wise, but that could be a potential offer sheet. I don't know. Nikolai Ehlers obviously doesn't want to come to a big market, so I wouldn't do that. But that's a player that I really would be interested in. He's got that 5-on-5 metrics that I like.
Not anymore.
And not anymore, it seems that. So it's really interesting, and I think that they're going to wind up having to piece together another winger or two in the Marchand type of realm, where it's like, an older guy that could be a one-year deal that you could just piece for next year. But the defense remains an issue. Who they're going to have up front is still up in the air, and how they maneuver the next, week or two is going to be pivotal. If they make the wrong decision come draft day, it's going to screw up the entirety of the offseason. All this talk about offer sheets, which Larry Brooks kind of put to bed anyway, but the only way you acquire a Peterka or that type of RFA is by including a first-round pick. And if you don't have that pick anymore to include, I don't know what you're doing. And the 12th pick this year doesn't tantalize somebody like, a first-round pick next year might, especially when they look at the Rangers' current roster and say, I don't know where this team's even going to be next year. So we'll see what happens.
It is just such a
black
hole that we're in, but it is going to be a black hole that we're going to be in together, because we got to watch it and we got to analyze them. And I'm sure everybody's going to be level-headed this offseason when moves get made, and no one's going to overreact to anything. And everything is going to be hunky-dory by the time we get to training camp in September. And I don't even want to think about it, but the way the Mets are going, hockey can't get here any faster.
Yeah,
holy.
They might not win again. They may not win again.
I had seen something today from Anthony Tacoma, or it might have been last night, that said the last 2 New York teams that have won their last games were the Rangers and Jets. Every other New York team is coming off a loss at the moment. So That's the state of New York
Yankees
baseball right
finally
now.
won a game today, but I can't even watch baseball. It's depressing. Before we go, today was Johnny Brodzinski's birthday, so happy birthday to Johnny Brodzinski. I don't know if I'm alone in this. I'd rather see Johnny Brodzinski be the 3C than Juuso Parssinen. So I'm just going to leave it there.
You know I hate Parsnip. I think he's the worst player I've ever seen.
I
like
just
there
can't stand
after
him.
we got him, I didn't know he was in the lineup until like halfway through the second period. I thought he didn't dress because you don't recognize him when he's on the ice.
Here's a way to spot a casual Ranger fan as opposed to like somebody who's diehard, or realistically somebody that's like started watching recently. Ask him how old Johnny Brodzinski is. If they say 27, 25, then they're not a real Ranger fan. That motherfucker is 34. He is all of 34. Yeah. Like, he is old.
But he does the things that I feel like his style of play, because of his age and because of how hard he had to work to get into the league, fits a Sullivan type of team, actually, especially in the bottom, 6. Parssinen, like him and Arthur Kaliev are two guys, if they played him, whatever. Kaliev's an RFA too, so I don't know what they're going to do with him. But I just don't see. There were people that were like, "Oh, Kaliev's been really good since he." How? I didn't see that at all. I don't know if we're watching the same games.
In the 4 games that he played,
I was at the one game where he scored 2 goals. One of them got called back.
Yeah.
And, that was the starting point where every time after that, it was like, oh, he's actually playing well. The goals aren't coming right now. Well, I don't know if you know who Arthur Kaliev is, but he's not a defensive stalwart as a forward. So the goals have to come for him to be an impact player. This seems to be the story for every single one of the Rangers players that's an RFA or that type of age and status, because, if the goals don't start coming for Othman soon, what the heck's he doing on the team? If the goals don't come and the points don't come for Perreault, he's not a defensive guy. So that has to be his game. The only one that can kind of get away with the lower tally is Berard, because he does play both sides of the puck, but he happens to be the only prospect that seems to be able to find the back of the net consistently last year. There's a lot going on, and I think that whatever move they make, I cannot say is good or bad until I watch it unfold, because at this point, my confidence level, if we had a meter of 0 to 100, is at about a 7.5 with this current regime. So
the number that they gave laugh?
The number that they gave laugh. It wasn't actually, but I mean, that's a contract now that you can't move. You have to hope that he goes off, because who's taking him for 8 years right now? And he's come on.
The last thing that I will say, as we end this episode and somehow ended up going basically an hour on June 19th, is that as we sit right now at 7:00 on June 19th, everybody is 0-0-0. It's a clean slate. Whatever happened last year is over. Everybody's sitting here at 0-0-0, and it is a brand new season. And the next time hockey is on, for the most part, the Rangers will be involved in it. Which is something we haven't been able to say for the last 2.5 months, which is fantastic to say. And as much as we shit on them, we're going to have actual games to talk about coming up. So thank God it's been too long, and let's get hockey back. Because I'm already is day one without hockey, and I don't know what to do. I was shaking when I woke up this morning. That might have been because I was thinking about Nick Bonino, but
the only red, white, and blue team that has a chance to win anything next year is USA at the Olympics.
Facts.
And that's where I'll leave it. And
are there no red, white, and blue teams in the league? Is it just the Rangers?
Not that have a chance of winning a cup in the NHL.
True.
But I will say, you mentioned Chris Kreider, Zook, potentially having his jersey raised. I don't want to be that guy, but the regular season championship banner seems to be his jersey ceremony. Like that, to me, if he stayed a Ranger and was 1 or 2 in every single category, yes, he'd have his jersey in the rafters. But because they're moving on from him now, and he didn't crack the one spot in any of those, besides the power play goal mark where he's tied, he's won in playoff goals. But I just don't think the resume is enough to have it up there, and they didn't win a cup. And that those banners that say regular season champs are the detriment to that. It sucks, but if he won 1 cup, him and Lundqvist, during one of those years, then I don't think anybody would be arguing with the fact that his jersey gets put up in the rafters. All right, final thoughts, anybody?
Gonna be a good 12 weeks. 12 weeks. Gonna be a good 12 days. I'm excited to see what we do.
12 weeks.
12 weeks. This shit's gonna be hitting the fan come
Yeah,
next
Fun
week.
fact,
it'll be fun.
Fun fact: 12 weeks from now, the NFL starts. So,
Oh, good. Another.
oh
season
yeah,
I
you're.
can't wait to
Oh,
watch.
we didn't even. I mean, listen, we don't gotta spend too much time on it, but Zook, ha ha.
Oh, I mean,
Ha.
no, I mean, everyone in the world knows nothing is more Jets than Aaron Rodgers playing decent on the Steelers this year.
I mean,
Like,
yeah, but I also.
Nothing is more Jets than that.
It took me a full week to realize that the Jets and Steelers open up this year in Week 1 at MetLife. So
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
it'll be fun, and they did that knowing. Kind of when they did that, I know he's had an inkling that Rodgers was coming, but once they made it on the schedule, I knew for a fact. They did say the reason why they didn't make it Sunday night is just in case Rodgers didn't come, but also with the Steelers schedule, they have the Packers coming to Pittsburgh on Sunday night, so they knew, because they obviously have the inside scoop on everything. He was always coming. He's just a weird dude that, has to make some things about him. So he didn't want to sign, during normal time. He wanted us to just talk about him for a little bit. But it'll be about the Rangers. It'll be a good 12 days. I think, as we alluded to throughout the episode, there's some things that potentially have to be done before July 1st. So next Thursday, we probably may have some stuff to talk about. I mean, next Thursday is the draft, right?
Next Friday.
Next
is the
Friday's the draft. All right,
Friday
so
night.
we'll have
And Thursday,
something.
I'm out, so you guys are
Okay.
gonna have to run that.
Perfect.
But I will say that the next 12 days are gonna be exciting. Good remains to be seen. We'll see what moves they make.
Figure that out.
All right, boys. It was fun. We'll catch you guys when we catch you guys. And
For the
hopefully the Rangers do the right
123
thing.
sickos that are here on June 19th, thank you very much for watching. You
Appreciate it. As
crazy
always.
motherfuckers. I love you guys.
All right, we'll see you
See
soon.
you guys.